20 years since hijacked airliners smashed into New York City's World Trade Center and the Pentagon outside Washington. The centerpiece of today's events was a visit by US President Joe Biden to the three sites associated with the attacks. He went to Ground Zero in Lower Manhattan, to the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia, and to Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where United Airlines Flight 93 crashed after passengers tried to regain control of that hijacked plane. Joining us now is SABC News correspondent Nina Maria Potts, live from Washington. Nina, thank you for talking to us as always. Just tell us more about the commemorations today.
Well, this anniversary, apart from marking 20 years, which is extremely sobering, is very different from the anniversaries that have gone before. The nation is obviously mourning and honouring the 9/11 attacks that changed America profoundly, but it's also grappling with the reality that the terror threat that upended American life as we know it 20 years ago is still very much there. You mentioned the ceremonies that are taking place across the United States today. There was a ceremony at Ground Zero first thing this morning, with the annual reading of all the victims who died at the World Trade Center. The President and First Lady Jill Biden were at that ceremony. They've gone on to Shanksville in Pennsylvania, where the third plane crashed. And their final stop will be Arlington in Virginia at the Pentagon. So they are visiting all three crash sites. The president is not speaking publicly today, but he did release a video message last night calling for unity in a divided country. He acknowledged that the grief and the pain of 9/11 has not waned for many families 20 years on. But this is a very sober anniversary, a realization that despite billions of dollars spent in Afghanistan and on things like aviation security, the terror threat is very real. And there's some anger leveled at the president for visiting these three sites today, some saying that he's to blame for the chaotic exit from Afghanistan, which they say poses a bigger national security threat than ever before.
Yeah. So Nina, it sounds like the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan has changed the rhetoric a little bit this year, although of course there's always been a debate about whether the war on terror was effective. But now we have this withdrawal, messy, like you say, little to show for 20 years of activity in Afghanistan. So are those debates about what has happened, even the abuses in the war on terror, much more acute?
Yes, it's very much overshadowing this anniversary. As you say, the failures in Iraq and Afghanistan very much obscuring the tone of this anniversary. And there's a lot of scrutiny now at the legacy of Afghanistan and President Biden's legacy as well. His withdrawal of US troops in August, months after a deadline was set by his predecessor, the former President Donald Trump. The rapid fall of Afghanistan to the Taliban, that's all provoked criticism from both sides of the political aisle. There's also the question of the 9/11 families who had been asking President Biden to skip the 20-year memorial events. They really wanted documents declassified that they believe show that Saudi Arabian leaders were involved in the attacks, and the president has now ordered the Department of Justice to do that. But Afghanistan presents a real problem for this administration on several fronts. The terror threat, the fact that the Taliban has claimed to be creating an inclusive government but hasn't, and now the row over Americans and green card holders and Afghan allies that were left behind. So this is a very, very complicated anniversary for this administration. It's hugely problematic.
Yeah. And then I'm so interested to know, I mean, beyond the government official commemorations, do ordinary Americans really get involved in these annual commemorations? this day is etched in so many people's memories. But of course, for young people, if they were really young at the time, maybe their understanding wasn't full. Do they try and describe the level of involvement, I guess, in remembering what happened in the US?
Well, you touch on a very, very good point. We have been talking to teenagers that were born after 9/11 and have no collective living memory of 9/11. And surprisingly, and it's difficult, of course, to generalize about American teenagers all over the country, but somewhat surprisingly, I guess because of the exit from Afghanistan, they're far more aware of the ramifications of 9/11 than we as reporters perhaps expected them to be. To your question about whether Americans all over the country are getting involved in ceremonies, I think they are. There is a succession of events all over the country that are being live streamed, big and small. And of course, for the 20th anniversary, very painful memories of survivors and the families of people who died. It's particularly poignant this year, and I do think that it's particularly painful for Americans as they confront the legacy of the global war on terror and what that has gained or lost America some 20 years on. So it is complicated, perhaps difficult to generalize, but you are definitely right to touch on it, to ask how involved Americans really are in this anniversary.
Yeah, and we're on some live visuals of one of those commemorations. Thank you very much, SABC News correspondent Nina Maria Potts. And we'll continue with this theme. We'll speak to our US correspondent later, and somebody fighting for health rights for some of the kids that were forced to go back to school just days later. And of course, there's memory upon memory now, pain upon pain, because this comes amidst the COVID-19 pandemic as well.